Hi, everyone. I was glad to read that some of you are rejuvenated and ready to hit that final home stretch towards summer vacation, and that you feel you have time to implement some of the more helpful strategies we've been discussing in our course. I just want to emphasize to you once again that I believe that best practices for English learners are really best practices for all of our students. And frankly, no matter what grade they are in, even high school. And so I hope that you will view our kind of review of all of these wonderful strategies and practices as helpful for instruction for all of your students. One of these, and you mentioned this, is turn and talk. What a great strategy this is for our English learners as they can practice their emerging skills with a buddy and not have to perform in front of the whole class. But again, this is helpful for all of our students because we are getting the thoughts of everyone and not just the one student we call on. Many of you talked about the pace of our language and the fact that it is hard. And I know I've mentioned to you, I have a hard time slowing my pace down. And I think of myself when I was doing my research in Cambodia and the problem I had trying to keep up with the Khmer language if people didn't slow down a lot for me. Some of you, many of you, most of you discussed your specific school literacy program. And certainly this is something that I don't feel comfortable jumping in and discussing, and I don't know enough about it, frankly. And so, but I do encourage you to have these discussions and have these conversations in your school because some of you did raise some key points that you are going to want to consider. I did kind of pick out a comment about the importance of enriching that Tier 1 instruction. And I do think this is so important because I am a believer in that if we can use best practices kind of right there at the initial teaching point, that we can catch a lot of these students who may need other sorts of supports. So let's give as much support as we can, even in that Tier 1, because as I mentioned, it's going to help everyone too. And along this line is that we can and we should use those components, those key components of SIOP in all of our teaching, not just for English learners. I mean, just think about the pace of the language and how much that would help students who may have auditory processing issues. It's not going to hurt anyone. Again, best practices for English learners are best practices for all. And kind of along that line, I wanted to talk a little bit about reading. Some of you talked about choral reading, and I appreciate and agree with some of those comments that it can be too fast for some children. Some students want to kind of move on, and that is true. Sometimes it's important to talk about it as, oh, we're singing like in a chorus and kind of make those comparisons to a choir or a chorus. Popcorn reading or reading aloud in round robin reading is not supported by the research literature. Just kind of want to throw that out there. It is performance reading that makes most students very, very nervous, doesn't really get at the kinds of instruction we want. So kind of going back to that turn and talk, having students maybe read to each other in pairs is very helpful. Having them maybe whisper read inside of a plumbing phone can be helpful too. So just something to consider as far as that read aloud is not really supported by our literature. Now, let's kind of make a turn to assessment because hopefully you're all working on your wordless picture book assignment, but the assessment paper is coming up. And to that end, Class 6 focuses on assessment. I've got several articles there for you to read. And in the assessment folder on Blackboard, there are more articles and the sample assessments that you need to analyze. I did put up a new 6+1 Traits of Writing rubric. I considered it last night, and when I look at this 6+1 Traits of Writing rubric, I personally find it a little more user-friendly. You may disagree, but please take a look at it. And I also will note that although this says rubric for K through 2, my personal belief is that it really is helpful for most elementary school students. The rubrics go from K2 to 3 through 12th grade. Now, 3 through 12th grade is quite a jump in my mind, and so I do tend to use that K2 rubric for most elementary school students. But see what you think. Okay, I'm excited to get your wordless picture books and assignment, and if you have any questions about the assessment paper, please do let me know. Have a great rest of the week.